Hey everybody, welcome to Late Late Horror Show. What is going on? I am Dino as always, and welcome to the History of Old Time Radio shows A through Z, stream number 3, RTN. Unfortunately, as the ads indicate in the thumbnail, tonight's discussion of radio history will be entirely in French. So good to see you in a good mood tonight there, RTN, Denny. Good to see everybody, Connie Clary, Tomo, Kevin, Black Roses is here. I know that. Ginger is here. Oh, well, let me go up and stream Roger S. Max, Chad Farr, Night Fright Talk Show. Please feel better. Hey, it's Dave Plouffe. What is going on? Lark Bark is here. What's going on? Frank McLeod. Good to see you. John McGee. Feel better, Night Fright. I hear you with being sick there. Becca Too Tall. She's too tall. Becca Too Tall. Hi, Dino. You have your water right here. I definitely need it when I'm reading. So, yes, I'm going to need it. Richard Speaker. What's going on? Good to see you, my friend. JLR, big hugs to you. Yes, definitely good to see everybody. I'm using the same thumbnail, so just so that everybody understands, it's going to be the same one for every stream. I'm just going to change the number, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, just so people know, and it's consistent across the board, because we are going in order from A through Z. And we are going to start, we ended with the Thin Man series, second episode. Today we're going to start it off with the Adventures of Topper. Please go ahead and give a thumbs up if you like the show. Subscribe, all that other good stuff. I'm going to do something else that I haven't done in an awful long time. It may take me just 5 minutes of your time at the beginning here. I'm going to read the channel members and give them their much ado for supporting the channel. So I'm going to go from the newest to it dropped again. I can't keep Coraline up on the darn desk. I'm going to fix that. But I'm going to go from the newest to the oldest and just say thank you to each and every one of you guys for supporting the channel and everything. In the meantime, here is, and then we'll get straight into the shows. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot of shows with very short descriptions, so we're going to get through a lot of shows that we haven't heard before in this one. Regina Daly, hello, good to see you. So here's the links if you want to join the Patreon or the channel membership. Tonight I will get up the movie night poll. I am going to put a poll up for movie night, which we watch on Discord now. It's much better, easier access, all that good stuff. Again, I don't want to bore everybody, but just give me 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes. Oh, and tonight's stream, can I say this to you guys? The overnight stream tonight is the rare mix of shows, stream number 2. You've got shows that are one-offs that you've never heard. So I figured with doing this tonight, I'm going to change things up a bit. And they're all great shows. I listened to them today, and last night as I was going and perusing and putting them all together. But Luke Slaughter of Tombstone. We got Once Upon a Midnight, Malice, Afterthought. It's an Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock hosts this show. So it's very rare. It's very cool. I listened to that entire thing. Probably the best show in the list tonight. So Once Upon a Midnight, hosted by Alfred Hitchcock. Very cool. The Plays the Thing, The Hypocrite. We got Policewoman, Rex Fisher, Saunders of the Circle X, The Dam, Screen Mystery Club. It goes on and on. We got Rajput, Hindu Secret Service, Jasmine Tower Murder. So, and then towards the end in the morning, you're gonna wake up to some newer kind of shows. There's one called Safari, Adventures of the Bull Elephant. I listened to that. A little bit different. Very rare. It's a very rare show. So, I put all of these in there tonight for some. Oh, and White Cliffs. NBC Special Demand Performance, 10/27/1940. A very, very good show. I'll listen to that one too. But the second one, Luke Slaughter, I put in the first time slot, the first show. And then Once Upon a Midnight, hosted by or narrated by Alfred Hitchcock. The best of the evening, in my opinion. But you guys might think something different. Yes. Dino is often imitated, but never done. So anyways, give me 5 minutes real quick. I want to say thank you to all the supporters, the channel memberships. Seth the Welsh at level 2 support. Total time as a member 1 month. Regina Daly, 5 days ago, level 1 support. Some of you guys have been back and forth and support coming and going, but I'm reading down as the list appears. Mark, 8 days, level 1 support. Dwayne Hoover's exit, level 1 support, 13 days. Magical Stony, who must have changed his name, been 14 days now. Level 2 support. XFL fan, level 1 support, 14 days. Emily Flotilla, level 2 support, 15 days. Brooke Mofat, level 1 support, 20 days. Jacob, level 1 support, 22 days. Jerry Prothero, level 1 support, 22 days. Melanie Brandt, level 2 support, 26 days. Dave the Rave, level 2 support, 28 days. Love Trues Mex. I don't know. Yeah, level 1 support for 29 days. Deidre Green, level 1 support for 1 month. Shell from the Block, level 2 support for a month. Again, I know this is boring, but just give me 5 minutes. I want to thank everybody. Elmer Krebs, level 1 support for 1 month. Lagaspa McDougal, level 1 support. Don Gray, level 1 support for a month. Robert Mulford, level 1 support for 2 months. Satin Sade, a level 1 support for 2 months. Naomi Farley, level 1 support for 2 months. T. Kennedy, level 1 support for 2 months. Karen Dorsey, level 1 support for 2 months. Derek McBride, level 2 support for 2 months. Cindy Settles, level 1 support for 2 months. A Shadow from the Tomb, level 1 support for 2 months. Emily Thompson, level 1 support for 2 months. Glenn Davis, level 2 support for 3 months. Paul Reese, level 1 support for 3 months. Binks, level 1 support for 3 months. Horror Junkie for Life, level 2 support for 3 months. 14 months total as a member. CM, level 2 support. I know this is boring, you guys. Sorry, but given the due. Level 2 support, 3 months. Beth Aristad, level 1 support, 3 months. Cat the Fantastic, level 1 support, 3 months. Oh my God, this is going to take a while. Hold on. Ralph Dione, level 1 support for 3 months. Harry Scott, level 2 support for 3 months. Peter Wernicke, level 1 support for 3 months. Scott Smith, level 1 support for 3 months. Roger S. Max, level 2 support, 4 months. Thank you. John St. Pierre, level 2 support for 4 months. Dean Barker, level 1 support, 4 months. Rich Cat Ranch, level 1 support for 4 months. Poetic Justice, level 1 for 4 months. Tokar, level 1 for 4 months. Oh, boy. Paul Ham, level 1 support for 4 months. RTN, level 1 support for 4 months. Thank you, Denny. Conrad, level 2 support for 4 months. Martin Wright, level 1 support for 4 months. MB, level 1 support for 4 months. Jake Redding, level 1 support for 4 months. Jeremy Beer, level 1 support for 4 months. This channel has been deleted. Level 1 support for 5 months. Wow. Channel's gone. Still supporting. Thank you. Emergency Remedial. Yes. Level 1 support for 5 months. Rastaman Gardening. Level 1 support for 5 months. Brandon Spring, level 1 support for 5 months. Trogdor the Burninator, level 2 support for 6 months. Travis DeLuca, level 2 support for 6 months. Michael Broberg, level 1 support for 6 months. Stephanie Hand, level 2 support. Stephanie Hand, thank you. Always with the comments and always giving a $5 thanks in the stream. For 6 months, Casey Ruiz, level 1 support for 6 months. Lisa Marshall, level 1 support for 6 months. John David, level 1 support for 6 months. Janine Eastman, level 2 support for 6 months. Just Goldberry, level 1 support for 6 months. I know you guys, this is taking a little bit of time. I'm getting through it. Zach Cato, level 1 support for 6 months. Ocean, level 1 support for 6 months. Frontier Studies, Philip, level 1 for support for 6 months. Jacko, level 1 support for 6 months. Heidi Joe Lahoud, level 1 support for 7 months. Connie Hilton, level 2 support for 7 months. Roseanne Nueva, level 1 support for 7 months. The Vagrancy Horror, level 3 support for 7 months. He's been a member for 16 months. Dave Myers, level 3 support, another level 3. Thank you. 7 months. Greg McCown, level 1 support for 7 months. Derby Girl, level 1 support for 7 months. Dawn Atkinson, level 2 support for 7 months. Richard Speaker, level 2 support for 7 months. Thank you, Richard. I know you're in the chat. Connie Clary, level 2 support for 7 months, but a member for 21 months, almost 2 years. Actually, you've been off and on. You've been from the very beginning, about 3 years. I know that. Ginger, One Girly Girl, level 1 support for 7 months. Thank you. Martin John Jacobson, level 1 support for 8 months. Goomba Holiday, level 1 support for 8 months. Beth G, level 1 support for 8 months. Jerry Elliott, level 2 support for 8 months. Patty Nielsen, level 1 support for 8 months. Alan Horsley Sr., level 1 support for 8 months. Thank you. Owen Salter, level 2 support for 9 months. Mad Chad, I haven't seen you in a while. Level 1 for support for 9 months. Scott Smith, level 2 support for 10 months. Big Daddy MRI, level 3 support for 10 months. Big Daddy MRI, wow, haven't seen you in a while, but yes, loves his Johnny Dollar. Overkill, 161, level 1 support for 10 months. Sounds pretty sweet, level 1 support for 11 months. Very cool. One Sean Bond, level 1 support for 11 months. PRJ Grudge, level 2 support for 11 months. We're getting there, you guys. Ink Blot 67, level 1 support for 11 months. Shrez Bells 08, level 2 support for 11 months. Beth Germanetti, level 3 support for 12 months. Thank you. Lord Richard PR, level 1 support for 12 months. Pink Panther, level 1 support for 12 months. Carl Martin, level 2 for support for 12 months. Listen, we're going to get to the shows. Julie Osborne, level 3 support for 12 months. Thank you. Almost done. Monkey Mind 79, level 1 support for 12 months. Science of Diagnostics, level 3 support for 12 months. Samantha KL, level 2 support for 13 months. A Doorway to Nightmare. Good old Winslow Swan. Again, go check out his channel. Does newer radio stuff. Dramas. Doorway to Nightmare, level 1 support for 13 months. Dean Rayo, level 1 support for 13 months. Mama Cat Blue, level 1 support for 13 months. Lisa and Ian, both at level 1 support, separate, 13 months. Trivia night, big on trivia night, you guys. Bill Thompson, level 1 support for 13 months. Stephen Gufretta at level 1 support for 13 months. Quintus, level 3 support for 14 months. Kit Kat, level 3 support for 14 months. Iris Rivera, level 1 support for 14 months. Brian Martinson, level 1 support for 14 months. We're almost done. Tobias F, level 1 support for 14 months from the UK. Jacob West, level 1 support for 14 months. Archer and Ace, level 1 support for 14 months. Grant L, who I haven't seen in a while. Hopefully Grant's doing okay. Level 1 support for 14 months. Eric LAMF, level 1 support for 15 months, who I also haven't seen in probably about a year. JLR, hugs as always, level 2 support for 15 months. Sky Moat, level 1 support for 15 months. Stephen Jules Rubin, level 1 support for 16 months. Ruby Marbury, level 1 support for 16 months. John McGee, level 1 support for 16 months. Very cool. Rob Tom 13 Abel, level 1 support for 16 months. Vicky Alcorn, level 1 support for 16 months. Crystal Arnett, level 1 support for 17 months. Old Time Radio at Night, level 3 support for 18 months. Always Learning, Mary, level 3 support. Much love to you. 17 months. Janet Theto, level 2 support for 17 months. Terry All 72, level 1 support for 17 months. The Grizzly, level 2 support. I know I could have done the whole stream on just thanking everybody. The Grizzly, level 2 support for 17 months. Edward Stewart, level 3 for 18 months. Kathy, level 1 support for 18 months. Connie Clary, again. You're on here twice, Connie. Level 2 support for 18 months. Catherine Pinero, level 1 support for 18 months. Richard Merriam, level 2 support for 18 months. Just like 6 more to go. Stephen Kelly, level 1 support for 19 months. Chibbles, level 2 support for 19 months. Bubba, level 1 support for 19 months. Lioness for Paws, a level 2 support for 20 months. James Vaughn, level 1 support for 20 months. Fury Phoenix, level 1 support for 20 months. Nikki, it's been a long time, a level 1 support for 20 months. And last on the list, showing the longest, but many have been here from the beginning here. Dalton Smothers, level 2 support at 21 months. I apologize, but I wanted to thank each and every one of the members for supporting the channel. And it means so much to me that you guys do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, did we have somebody in the chat? Ink me again. I should go with the Cocoa Brother. Oh, brother. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So with that said, I do apologize. Well, I can't apologize for thanking my supporters. So happy birthday, Navia. The late version, not boring at all. I am just so happy I am on time for once. Okay, now is the part where we get into the nitty gritty. Tail Flaudermouse, what's going on? Harry Scott is here. I see there's a lot of new people coming in here. Couldn't do it without them. Exactly. So I had to thank each and every one of them. Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking care of that in the chat. So with that said, let's start. 15 minutes in. And you know what? I just fixed my clock on the computer. All I had to do was hit a button, set the time automatically, because I've been like 2 minutes late in these streams. You know, like when we're doing the discussions, Ginger will go, you know what? It's time. Oh, I should have. I'm getting a little hot here. Oh, it's getting hot. You're the best OTR host. Thank you, JLR. Much appreciated. Listen, I just do what I do. I am who I am, and I love Old Time Radio. I love horror movies. I love all of you guys for being a part of it. Jules PDX, Happy New Year. Yes, Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Be sure to check out the rare collection of episodes tonight, overnight tonight. So something a little bit different in each of those shows. Alfred Hitchcock narrating the first one. But here we go. The Adventures of Topper. Situation comedy based on the novel by Thorne Smith and the subsequent film series starring Roland Young. So Topper. First a radio series and a movie, subsequent. Broadcast history, June 7th through September 13th, 1945 on ABC, 30 minutes. Thursdays at 8:30. Final 2 shows at 8. Post Toasties. Sponsor. Cast, Roland Young as Cosmo Topper. Hope Emerson as his wife Henrietta. Paul Mann and Francis Cheney as George and Marion Kirby. Ghosts who appear only to Topper. Tony Barrett, also heard as George. So Cosmo Topper was a banker whose life was complicated by two friendly spirits. The comedy ensued when Topper talked to his ethereal friends and, of course, seemed to be talking to people around him. "Go away," he would say, or "That's a terrible suit you're wearing." This was the same dilemma faced by Donald O'Connor in the Francis the Talking Mule film series. Topper was done far more effectively on television, becoming one of that medium's early successes. In the TV series, George and Marion Kirby were killed in an avalanche while skiing. Also killed was Neil, the alcoholic Saint Bernard. The alcoholic Saint Bernard. You remember that? Oh, crazy. Who had come to the rescue to rescue them. The TV roles were played by Leo G. Carroll, Topper, Lee Patrick Henrietta, and Ann Jeffries, and Robert Sterling as George and Marion. Listen, Cary Grant in the movie Topper, fantastic. I'll never forget it. Such a good film. The radio series is pretty funny too. I never got to see the TV series, that's for sure. A lot easier to work with Ghost on the radio than in a movie, LOL. Yepers Dave Plouffe. Heck yeah, for sure. Very busy, always very busy. NB, just, yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone, he says. Hello. On to the next one. The Affairs of Anne Scotland. Detective drama. The Affairs of Anne Scotland. Detective drama. One I've never heard, and I'm not sure if they exist. Broadcast history, October 30th, 1946 through October 22nd, 1947 on ABC, 30 minutes, Wednesdays at 9. Hudnut was the sponsor. I don't know what a Hudnut is. Hudnut, Hudnut, but there you go. Cast Arlene Francis as Anne Scotland. Music, Dal Castillo, organ. We got some organ in this one. Director, Helen Mack. Hello, Rich Cat Ranch. Good to see you. Hello, Dino, my friend. Just now getting a break today. Yes, you've been very busy. I've seen a couple of the videos where you're waking up with the horses and stuff, and hopefully Rich is doing better. Hopefully. Much love to each and every one of you. So the Affairs of Anne Scotland. Anne Scotland was described in the memoir of Arlene Francis as a sort of private eyelash. She was a satin-tongued cutie. Quick on the uptake, the kind of role that was ideal for Francis. Arlene was pregnant when this series aired. I could have been called Scotland Yard because that's how wide I was. But it didn't matter in a medium where everything was done with the voice. Her friend Claire Trevor gave this assessment of her come hither performance. You don't sound the least bit pregnant, but you sound as though you might be at any moment. I guess complimenting her cute voice as Anne Scotland. So there you go. The Affairs of Anne Scotland. I don't believe I have any of these shows, and I'm not sure any exist. Otherwise, I would think I would have them. I could be wrong, though. Not like I have them all. Topper Returns, my favorite in the movie series, Dave Plouffe. I probably agree with you. Yes. It's been a little bit of time since I've watched them, but yeah, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with the Topper movies for sure. Remember Arlene Francis from What's My Line? And Francis the Talking. Anyways, the next show in order on the list from A to Z, The Affairs of Anthony. This one was a soap opera. Broadcast history was May 29th, 1939 through March 22nd, 1940 on the Blue Network. 15 minutes daily at 3:15. Sustained. Cast Henry Hunter as Anthony Marley Bone Jr., Marvin Miller as Anthony Sr., Laurette Philbrandt as Susan, Lenora Kingston as June, Bernadine Flynn as Alice McGinty. The director was Alex Grunberg, and the writer, Sandra Michael. Another one I've never heard of. But there you go. We've got a lot of little clips of so we're going to get through a lot today. I'm so glad for this blessing to learn about so many great shows, Dino. Thank you. You're welcome, Rich Cat Ranch. Much appreciated. Okay, continuing. The next one on the list is The Affairs of Peter Salem. This is what gets me. There are so many detective dramas, detective shows that don't exist no more. That drives me nuts. Here's another one. I've never seen it, nor have I heard it. If anybody finds it, please let me know. The Affairs of Peter Salem, detective drama. Not a whole lot known about this one, but broadcast history, May 7th, 1949 through April 18th, 1953. You would think some would exist, but not necessarily. That's a little bit of time. The Mutual Network for 30 minutes. Heard most often on Sundays, but also Mondays and Saturdays. Sustained. Cast Santos Ortega as Peter Salem. Peter Salem, detective. A small town detective who used brain power and wits to trip up sophisticated lawbreakers from the city. Jack Rhimes as his sidekick, Marty. Regulars from the New York radio pool, Everett Sloan, Louis Van Rooten, Ann Shepard, etc. Producer, Hyman Brown. Director, Menda Brown. Any relations to Hyman Brown? I'm not sure. Writer, Louis Vittes, Vittes. Vitz, whatever. Sound effect. The most important? No. Adrian Penner, sound effects. I think that's the first time I've heard of Adrian Penner as sound effects person, but very cool. Again, The Affairs of Peter Salem, detective. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. Peter Salem just went Salem right out of here. RTN. Good one, buddy. Good one, buddy. I love it. Nothing for me, but pretty fatigued only because of this is so great because of the new titles coming. Yeah. No, we've got some new ones. That's for sure. Next one. African Trek. African folk music. So there you go. Broadcast history was October 13th, 1939 through October 17th, 1943 on the Blue Network for 30 minutes, Fridays at 7:30 until November 1940. Then Sundays at 1:30, July 13th, 1946 through March 15th, 1947 on ABC. 15 minutes, Saturdays at 10:15 a.m. The creator of African Trek was Joseph Marais, Marais, Joseph Marais, who, with 3 companions, performed a vast repertoire of Native African and Boer folk songs, much as Harry Horlick had done with Gypsy Ballads a decade earlier. Marais gave his show an authentic sound rooted in firsthand knowledge. Born near Cape Town, Marais was a symphony orchestra violinist in his teens and a longtime collector of Afrikaner and Hottentot music. His series drew so much fan mail that the Blue Network explained it from 15 to 30 minutes. Sounds like me thanking you guys at the beginning of the show. By 1941, it was being shortwave to Africa. The campfire flavor of such Boer war, B-O-E-R, war numbers as Brandy, Leave Me Alone, gave the series an exotic ambiance that Americans found fascinating. There were also stories and folk yarns. The theme was Sari Marias, Sariemarais. There you go. Some African folk music, African Trek. Very cool, very cool. Lots of familiar names there, Tail Flaudermouse. Very cool. Next show is Against the Storm. Against the Storm. This was a serial drama. Broadcast history was October 16th, 1939. So we got an early one through December 25th, 1942. Getting cut off right at Christmas time. On NBC, 15 minutes daily. Opened at 5:15, but was frequently moved. Procter & Gamble for Ivory Soap. Let's see. April 25th through October 21st, 1949. Mutual Network, 30 minutes daily at 11:30 a.m. Philip Morris. October 1st, 1951 through June 27th, 1952 on ABC, 15 minutes, daily at 10:45 a.m., Philip Morris. Imagine a show coming on at 10:45. Wow. Okay, so cast was Roger DeCoven as Professor Jason McKinley Allen of Harper College. DeCoven starred in the three runs through 3 years, though 3 years apart. DeCoven starred in the three runs, though years apart. May Davenport Seymour as his wife Margaret from 1939, also played by Katherine Anderson, 1949, and Florence Malone. Gertrude Warner and Claudia Morgan as their daughter Christy. Joan Tompkins and Dolores Gillen as their daughter Siri. Siri is a voice of her own now on all Apple products. Arnold Moss and Alexander Scourby as Philip Cameron, who married Christy. Grant Richards as Siri's husband, Hal Thomas. Chester Stratton as Mark Scott. Joan Alexander and Ruth Madison as Nicole Scott. Charlotte Holland as Kathy Reimer, Philip Clark as Dr. Reimer, Elliot Reed as Julian Browning, 1949, Eddie Mayhoff as Professor Waldo Greentree in 1949. Director was Axel Grunberg, writer Sandra Michael, theme from Song of Bernadette by Alfred Newman, not from Mad Magazine. Alfred E. Newman did it for Mad Magazine. Anyways, Against the Storm was so highbrow that to call it a soap opera made its creator-writer see red. Sandra Michael had long believed the daytime radio needed an antidote for the mindless formula of Our Gal Sunday and Stella Dallas. Michael disdained the cliffhanger, that well-worn device that made listeners wonder, will John's wife finally meet John's other wife? And what will happen then? Michael was born in Denmark. She wrote commercials and announced fashion shows in Milwaukee, then moved to Hollywood to write some of the quality nighttime shows. Her serial opened in wartime and quickly established its theme of resistance to that war, indeed to all wars. The central character, Professor Allen, taught at Harper University and lived at Deep Pool Farm, a setting taken from the 32-acre farm in Connecticut where Michael lived. Allen was a pacifist and an outspoken opponent of Hitler. Many episodes were solid philosophy. On Memorial Day, 1941, the entire broadcast was soliloquy about Allen's childhood pal Porky Mason, killed in France in the First War. Against the Storm was lauded for originality. A New York Times critic, comparing it with its daytime neighbors, termed it stratospheric. Whole broadcasts were given over to ballads or readings from Walt Whitman or Edna St. Vincent. Edgar Lee Masters appeared, reading from his Spoon River anthology. John Masefield was short-waved in from Britain. Ostensibly lecturing to Professor Allen's class, President Roosevelt accepted a speaking part, an appearance shelved when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. In 1942, the show won a Peabody Award, the only daytime serial ever thus honored. By the end of that year, it was off the air. Newsweek summed up the network line saying the show didn't click with listening housewives, but ratings were respectable. Throughout the run, Sandra Michael gave a Radio Life reporter a different version years later. She wanted the show expanded to 30 minutes daily, a format unheard of in the soap schedule. When the network refused, she requested and received a release from the agency. She did get her half hour from Mutual in 1949, but it lasted less than a year. So there you go. Very interesting. Let's see. Just making sure nobody's chiming in here. Hope Rich recovers. Okay, Queenie organ music fashion. Cue the organ music. Now I wonder what happened when John's wife met John's other wife. Right? Edgar Lee Masters, Spoon River Anthology. Read it as a little girl. Loved it ever since. Becca Tutal. Very cool. RTN. Okay, the next one is The Air Adventures of Jimmy Allen. This one I have shows of. Transcribed Juvenile Adventure Serial. Broadcast history was 1933 through 1937. 15 minutes. Transcribed for Skelly Oil, a Midwest petroleum company, and aired by stations throughout the Skelly market area. Syndicated by World Broadcasting to businesses outside the Skelly area, though production ceased, repeats aired sporadically throughout the country through the early 1940s. Cast: John Frank as Jimmy Allen, 16-year-old boy pilot. Wow. Shelby Stork as his pal and mentor, Speed Robertson. Also, Art Ellison and Al Christie. 1946 through 1947, more than 400 new 15-minute episodes recorded and broadcast for International Shoe Company of Kansas City and other sponsors. The cast was Jack Schlichter as Jimmy, Shelby Stork as Speed, Twila Comer, I like that name, Twila, Twila Comer, as Jimmy's girlfriend Barbara. Creators, writers were Bob Burt, with 2 T's at the end, Burtt, and Bill Moore. Because The Air Adventures of Jimmy Allen was never on a network, its history has until recently remained vague. In 1980, Jimmy Allen advocate Walter House unearthed all the vital facts and published them in a detailed 2-part article in the magazine RC Model Builder. I'm sure that hit a big audience, but it got out there. The idea of a serial about a boy pilot was first suggested by a pair of World War I flying aces, Bob Burt and Bill Moore, at a party in Kansas City. Burt and Moore had become writers, and their scenario was met with enthusiasm by Russell C. Comer. Comer sold the package to Skelly Oil, and 3 stations carried the initial series: KDAF, Kansas City, KLZ, Denver, and KVOO, Tulsa. I think this is another cool thing. I mean, back in the day, single broadcasting stations with a whatever watt tower would be the ones in a certain city that might broadcast a certain show. So imagine the shows that aren't even in this that we don't still know about that were aired on some of these little tiny stations. I mean, it's just, oh, the fascination of history, right? Of old time radio. The first broadcast was aired February 23rd, 1933, way before the Second World War. Soon, 7 more stations were added, and Skelly found itself involved in one of the great promotions of early radio. A Jimmy Allen Flying Club was created. All a kid had to do was apply at any Skelly station. Very cool. Applicants received many premiums. Highly treasured today, a set of wings, a membership emblem, and a personal letter from Jimmy Allen. Something about the golden era, man. All the little things that meant something. Other giveaways, a Jimmy Allen picture puzzle, a Skelly truck refueling a light airplane. Can you imagine how much a Skelly truck would be worth right now, refueling a light airplane? Ooh, a Secret Service whistle, and a Jimmy Allen album. The club newspaper was sent out to 600,000 kids a week, and Jimmy Allen air races, attended by tens of thousands of people, were held in major Midwest cities where the show was heard. Skelly had to hire a special staff just to answer Jimmy Allen mail. Flying lessons, model planes, and other promotions were part of the mix, available to listeners who displayed their club credentials at their Skelly oil station. Comer never sold the show to a network. By marketing it himself to the Richfield Oil Company on the West Coast and to scores of individual businesses elsewhere, he kept control of it. Throughout the 1930s, interest was high. Boys were fascinated by the adventures of Jimmy, his older pal Speed Robertson, and their mechanic Flash Lewis. Together they solved mysteries, even murder, unusual for juvenile fare at the times. When Jimmy's passenger Quackenbush died under mysterious circumstances, went on hunts for treasure, and raced in air shows around the country, their enemies were Black Pete and Digger Jolson. The original Jimmy Allen, John Frank, was more than 40 years old when the series opened. Murray McLean, then 16 and a son of radio actress Betty McLean, was hired to make personal appearances as Jimmy. Some Milli Vanilli going on there. Let's see where my appeared as Jimmy. But Frank continued the radio role throughout the original series. But 1936, the character was so popular that Paramount shot a Jimmy Allen movie, The Sky Parade, in 1936. In 1937, Skelly dropped the show and began working with Burt and Moore on a new air series, which would become the long-running classic Captain Midnight. The post-war revival was not successful. Its day was the 1930s, when, as House tells us, kids, radio, and aviation were growing up together. So there you go. Wow, Jimmy Allen. And that's another thing. A Trotter Horse Watson Jr. What's going on, Trotter Horse? Good to see you here. Good to have you. Everybody, much love to each and every one of you tonight. Good to see you, that's for sure. Jimmy Allen, you know what? Some of the juvenile, hold on. What I like about some of the juvenile series is it makes you feel like a kid inside. If you've got that old feeling of like when you would get your little Orphan Annie, badge and all the stuff, even the Cracker Jack boxes where little toys and prizes would come out of. These juvenile series that I don't put many up on the channel because at the moment, but I think they will eventually get there because there's a lot of different types of shows other than detective mystery and all that that can be put up here in certain formats. I know it doesn't get as many views. Like I used to do Monday comedies and Western Wednesdays. I think I'm going to have to get back to that, just so there's a big skew of stuff that's never been on the channel before, you know. But these juvenile serials just made you feel like a kid. Like I can sit and lay down in the bedroom, you know, tonight and listen to just some, you know, whatever. Even Captain Midnight kind of gave you that feeling of being a kid, right? It's just fantastic. Anyways, let's move on. A lot of the juvenile shows were pretty sophisticated as well. Sophisticated still. Yes, Tail Flaudermouse. Exactly. What's up, Dino? Much love to you. Love for the show. Thank you. Baby Snooks. Listen, Dino's Duck Soup's got a lot of comedy over there. But I'll be doing some comedy Mondays starting up here for sure, I think. Lisa, glad to listen in tonight for a bit. Good to have you here, Lisa. Kevin Ennis, love this channel. Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you here. Haven't seen the name before. Jimmy Stewart Westerns, yepper. Six Shooter, which you can find on this channel, is a very good Jimmy Stewart Western. So let's move on to the next show, the Al Jolson Show. Al Jolson. And thank you, Connie Clary. And also, if anybody wants to support the channel, there are the links to the Patreon. Movie night poll going up today. That poll will be on Patreon for the channel members, and I will also put that poll up in Discord, and I will count all of them together and come up with whatever movie. So poll coming. If it's not tonight, tomorrow. But anyways, the Al Jolson Show. Musical variety spanning the years 1932 through 1949. For various sponsors and under various titles, Jolson was a dominant personality whose appearance in any series inevitably made the public think of it as the Jolson Show, whatever its real title might have been, because Al Jolson was such a character. Broadcast history was November 18th, 1932 through February 24th, 1933. We're going to get through some dates here. Okay. On NBC, 30 minutes, Fridays at 10. Presenting Al Jolson, sponsored by Chevrolet. Orchestra was Ted Fiorito. August 3rd, 1933 through August 16th, 1934. On NBC, 60 Minutes, Thursdays at 10. Joined Paul Whiteman's Kraft Phoenix program, which had begun June 26, 1933. Another one I've never heard of. And became the long-running Kraft Music Hall. There you go. I know that. Jolson's appearances were erratic, with many absences. KMH continued long after Jolson's departure, with Bing Crosby as a star. April 6, 1935 through March 6, 1936, NBC, 60 Minutes, Saturdays at 9:30, Shell, Chateau, Shell Oil. Orchestra, Victor Young. Director, Herb Polisi of J. Walter Thompson. Writer-producer Carol of the Thompson Agency. And the theme, Golden Gate. Jolson left the show in progress. It ran with other hosts until June 26, 1937. Very cool. December 22nd, 1936 through March 14th, 1939 on CBS, 30 Minutes. Tuesdays at 8:30, the Lifebuoy program, then the Rinso program, then the Tuesday night party, Lever Brothers, Co-stars Harry Einstein as Parky Parky Martha Ray, announcer Tiny Ruffner, music Lud Gluskin, Victor Young. Again, Jolson left the series in progress. Dick Powell took over March 21st, 1939. Then Walter O'Keefe on September 19th, and it left the air December 12th, 1939. October 6, 1942 through June 29th, 1943 on CBS, 30 minutes, Tuesdays at 8:30, the Colgate program, Colgate Company, the star, Monty Woolley, good old Monty Woolley, vocalist Joe Strafford, orchestra Gordon Jenkins, Ray Block, producer William A. Bacher, director Bill Lawrence. We're almost through the dates. October 2nd, 1947 through May 26, 1949 on NBC, 30 minutes, Thursdays at 9, the Kraft Music Hall, Kraft Foods Company, the star Oscar Levant, announcer Ken Carpenter, orchestra Lou Bring, theme April showers. Wow. Okay, here we go. Depending on Al Jolson show ran a long time, so there's a lot of information. Depending on the source, Al Jolson was either the world's greatest entertainer or the world's biggest ham. Some people would have said both. His natural environment was the stage. He had buckets of charisma before anyone had ever heard of the word. Thought Jolson loved performing before an audience. He was a formidable radio presence, fully able to project his dynamic, forceful nature over the air. His name was Asa Jolson. He was born May 26, 1886, son of a Russian rabbi. In his youth, he considered becoming a cantor. Instead, he became a performer, a specialist in blackface vaudeville skits, whose down-on-one-knee delivery of robust Southern songs was as powerful in its way as Louis Armstrong was on trumpet. We will never forget Al Jolson's. His popularity grew quickly after 1909 when he first sang Mammy from a San Francisco stage. He so loved performing that he often kept his captive audience overtime. In 1927, he starred in The Jazz Singer, the world's first talking picture. He was on the air as early as 1928 in guest roles and cameos, but he seemed too busy to be tied down long in regular radio jobs. Carol described in his 1970 memoir, None of My Business, how the mid-1930s series Shell Chateau was put together. It was typical Depression fare, 5 acts and Jolson, with much brainstorming put into the title. The sponsor wanted its name up front, and it was Carroll himself who came up with the Shell Chateau. It was thought at the time that a variety show gained something by pretending to air from exotic locations, though some amusing and justified as the tapes reveal. Fears were expressed over how Jolson might pronounce chateau on the air. The mix was predictable: greetings, a warm-up, and a song by Jolson. A comedy act. Where am I at? Another song. A singing guest such as Dixie Lee. Music. Another Jolson number. A station break. A dramatic skit. Jolson again, and so on. Among other guests, Shell Chateau drew John and Lionel Barrymore, Betty Davis, Ginger Rogers, Joe Penner, and such sports personalities as Slapsy, Maxie Rosenblum. When Jolson left the show in midstream, Shell tried to keep it on the air with such hosts as Wallace Berry and Edward Everett Horton, but the show was swamped in the ratings wars, proving that Jolson had been its one major draw. Jolson's Lifeboy program at 30 minutes was not as well produced as Shell Chateau, but it soon gained a major share of the Tuesday night audience. And thank you very much, Linda Bear, for level 1 support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will get to the chat and what you guys got in there in a second. Almost done with this. This was Jolson's longest regular stint. But again, he left before the run concluded. In many ways, his 1942-1943 CBS series for Colgate was his most interesting show. Monty Woolley, ex-Yale professor turned actor, parlayed a single guest appearance into a regular co-star status. The writers, and you can go to Dino's Duck Soup and find the fabulous Montags with Monty Woolley. The writers had a fine time with this, pitting the lowbrow Jolson against the highbrow Woolley. If you give your brain to the Smithsonian, Woolley said to Jolson on one broadcast, I'll give them a magnifying glass. Jolson's career went into a decline in the early 40s, but was resurrected in 1946 when Columbia filmed The Jolson Story. Larry Parks played the young Jolson, but Jolson's voice was used in the soundtrack. And again, he was a hot property. He was now doing so many radio guest spots that it became a running gag of comedians. It also led to a sequel, Jolson Sings Again, in 1949. Both stories were dramatized on the Lux Radio Theater, with Jolson playing himself. By then, Bing Crosby had left the Kraft Music Hall in a format dispute, and Jolson was given the host's role, returning to the series that he had left 13 years before. Shows are available on tape from each Jolson era after the 1934 Kraft Music Hall, though his music lost favor for a time because of its darky lyrics. He remains one of the medium's giants. Shell Chateau offers a dated format. His historically important but tired. The Lifeboy program is musically interesting, but the comedy is stale business. Perhaps Jolson's best series for modern listening is the later Kraft Music Hall. Many shows exist in good fidelity. Jolson is in good voice, and Oscar Levant adds significantly to the show. For those who appreciate his dry wit, this came at the end of Jolson's life, as he died October 23, 1950. So a lot to talk about with the Al Jolson's show and the history behind that, because of the length that and his history, right? Very controversial subject to talk about when we get into old time radio shows. Blackface is something that we look at now, and we try to look in a historical point of view, but just like the Charlie Chans would be played by American actors, it's something that it's of its time. I know people hate having somebody say it's of its time and it's historical, but it is. It's just the way things were back then. Would never do anything like that today unless you were doing a movie on the history of these types of things, subject matter. But Linda Bear, thank you for the member. Too Many Martinis, what's going on? Also appeared on the Jack Benny show, says Dave Plouffe. Yes. Just going back to see. Let's see. Didn't want to miss anything. Dave Plouffe says there was a great Ellery Queen episode. Jim Hutton as Ellery, called Aunt Aggie's Farewell Performance, based on a murder behind the scenes of an OTR radio program. Nice, Dave Plouffe. Yes. Ellery Queen. Yep. You are 100%. And yes, they've done that in Abbott Costello, murder behind the scenes of OTR. They did that in Charlie Chan, somewhat. Murder at the Wax Museum was they were performing an investigation while doing a radio broadcast, so somewhat, but more so Abbott and Costello. Adam for Christ, what's going on? Good to see you. Good to have you, man. Even on MASH, the Koreans were mostly played by Japanese actors. Yeah, it's what it is. So let's move on to the next show. Oh, how much time we got here? Oh, an hour went by. The Al Pierce Show. The Al Pierce Show. It's a comedy. I guess I should take a drink first. Good to see you guys today, man. Hopefully you guys are all having a good new year. I know some are sick, but it'll pass, and we will all enjoy the new year together, right? Continued in this ride, this journey that we are taking into old time radio. So so the Al Pierce Show was a comedy. Broadcast history was 1928 through 1932 on KFRC San Francisco. The Happy-Go-Lucky Hour is what it was. The Happy-Go-Lucky Hour. January 13th, 1934 through March 29th, 1935. On the Blue Network. 30 minutes Saturdays at 6 until September. Then 2 15-minute shows heard Mondays and Fridays at 5. May 13th, 1935 through April 3rd, 1936 on NBC. Sometimes Blue Network, 30 minutes, a schedule bouncer, but often Fridays at 5, Pepsodent. Sponsored. It's the very first airings, like 1928 through 1932 on KFRC in San Francisco, sponsored by the Happy-Go-Lucky Hour. Just one station in San Francisco. Makes you wonder, I would love to hear the very first shows, and a lot of times those aren't the ones that survive. But it would be very interesting for sure. That's for sure. Okay, so January 5th, 1937 through June 28th, 1938 on CBS, 30 minutes, Tuesdays at 9. Watch the fun go by. Ford Motors sponsor. October 10th, 1938 through July 31st, 1939. NBC, 30 minutes, Mondays at 8. Grape Nuts. You can tell the show wasn't doing well and was bouncing all over the place when you have these many changes in sponsors and time slots and channels and stations. Also, October 11th, 1939 through April 3rd, 1940 on CBS again, 30 minutes, Wednesdays at 8, Dole Pineapple. May 3rd, 1940 through January 2nd, 1942 on CBS, 30 minutes, Fridays at 7:30, Camel Cigarettes. January 8th, July 2nd through July 2nd of 1942 on NBC, 30 minutes, Thursdays at 7:30, Camel Cigarettes. May 7th through July 30th, 1944 on the Blue Network, 30 minutes, Sundays at 4, Fun Valley, Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper in 1944. I'd like to hear the commercial of Dr. Pepper in 1944. December 9th, 1944, June 3rd through June 30th, 1945, CBS, 30 minutes, Saturdays at 10:15. Here Comes Elmer, or the Al Pierce Show. Lewis Howe, sponsor. December 3rd, 1945 through September 6th, 1946. ABC, 30 minutes, 5 a week at 3. July 26th through October 25th, 1947 on ABC, 60 minutes, Saturdays at 9 a.m. The cast. Here we go. The cast. Al Pierce, often in the role of Elmer Blurt, self-conscious door-to-door salesman, broadcasting often under the title Al Pierce and His Gang. The Gang in 1929 included Pierce's brother, Cal, Gene Clarimo, how do you say that? Clarimaux. Guy who can't read is reading. Norman Nielsen, Hazel Warner, Abe Bloom, Monroe Upton as Lord Bilgewater, Tommy Harris, Charles Carter, Edna Fisher, and Cecil Wright. Mid-1930s gang included Arlene Harris, the human chatterbox, who delivered a mile-a-minute telephone monologues, Andy Andrews, the singing comic, tenor Harry Foster, Mabel Todd, Maury Amsterdam, Tony Romano, tenor Carlisle Bennett, Harry Stewart as Yogi Jorgensen, Bill Wright as Zeb of the Ebb, and Zeb skits Pierce was Ebb. Kitty O'Neill, the Laughing Lady, Jennison Parker as Yabut of the team Yabut, and Cheerilee. I like that. Bill Wright as Cheerilee, Bill Comstock as Tizzy Lish. Was there a Tizzy Lish show? Something tells me there was a Tizzy Lish show. Tizzy Lish show. The show's expert in cooking and health. Others, Artie Auerbach, Arthur Q. Bryan, Orville Andrews, Marie Green and her Merry Men, The Three Cheers, Travis Hale, Phil Hanna, E.J. Derry. Announcers were Bill Goodwin, Ken Roberts, Wendell Niles, orchestra Harry Sosnick, Larry Marsh, Carl Hoff, and sound effects by Ray Erlenborn. Al Pierce was one of radio's earliest and most durable comics. He was singing and playing banjo at KFRC San Francisco when a writer offered him a character skit starring a timid traveling salesman named Elmer. Pierce was typecast as he had once sold insurance door to door. He later sold real estate with his brother, Cal, sang on the air in 1928 with the San Francisco Real Estate Glee Club. He was moonlighting at KFRC when writer Jack Hasty gave him the Elmer skit. Elmer was a bashful salesman who'd rather miss a sale than confront a customer. He would knock distinctively, bump, 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 and mutter, "Nobody home. I hope, I hope, I hope." Elmer became Elmer Blurt, and the phrase became a national slogan. Many of his gang remained with Pierce across frequent changes of network, format, and sponsor. Arlene Harris, the human chatterbox, could gush 240 words a minute, talking to her friend Maisie on the phone. Bill Comstock developed his female Tizzy Lish character on a recipe show at a station where he once worked. Ebb and Zeb were two geezers who ran a general store at the Crossroads. Harry Stewart as Yogi Jorgensen sang nonsense songs with a Swedish accent. Among the most popular being Jingle Bells and I Just Go Nuts at Christmas. You like that, RTN? Let me repeat those. Jingle Bells and I Just Go Nuts at Christmas. Something you would say. Pierce faded quickly after the war. He had a brief stint on TV in the 50s, but his comedy was an earlier day. He died June 3rd, 1961. Yikes. A lot to talk about there for that show, huh? Very cool. Let's see. The Blue Network was NBC. NBC had two networks, Blue and Red. Yes, they sold off the Red Network, which became ABC. There you go. Thank you, RTN. Thank you. Look at that. Yes, good to see you, John McKee. Definitely. Next one is The Alan Young Show. The Alan Young Show. Another situation comedy. Let me take a sip. Again, might not be for everybody, these streams, but, hopefully you enjoy the info for what it is. The Alan Young Show, situation comedy, broadcast history, June 28th through September 20th, 1944. NBC, 30 minutes, Wednesdays at 9. A summer substitute for Eddie Cantor. Sale Hepatica. Cast Alan Young as himself, a bashful young man. He really was, said his wife, Jeannie, throughout the run of the show. Vocalist B. Wayne. Music Peter Van Steeden. October 3rd, 1944 through June 28th, 1946. ABC, 30 minutes, Tuesdays at 8:30 until September. Then Fridays at 8:30, Ipana. Cast, Ipana sponsor. Cast Jean Gillespie as young girlfriend Betty, also played by Doris Singleton. Ed Begley as Papa Dittenpfeffer. Betty's crusty father. What was the meaning of crusty back in the 40s? Crusty. Takes on a different meaning today. Writers Jay Summers, Will Glickman. September 20th, 1946 through May 30th, 1947 on NBC. 30 minutes, Fridays at 8:30, then at 8 o'clock. Ipana, Ipana, sponsor. January 11th through July 5th, 1949 on NBC, 30 minutes. Tuesdays at 8:30, Tums. My Best Friend Tums. Cast Louise Erickson as Betty. Jim Backus as snooty playboy Hubert Updike III. With Nicodemus Stewart, Hal March, and Ken Christie. Announcer was Don Wilson. Vocalists were the Regulars, Sue Allen, Faye Reeder, Jenny Reese, and Jenny Young. Music, George Wiley. Producer, director, Helen Mack. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Oh, geez. Lost my place. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys and gals. Alan Young was an English-born comic who learned the craft of radio in Canada. At CJOR, he became friends with Fletcher Markle, who later became a force in American radio. Young's earliest Canadian show was called Stag Party. He was virtually the entire act, and when he asked for a raise from $15 a week, he was fired. Soon he was earning $150 a week doing situation comedy on CBL, where he was heard by an agent who helped him break into American radio. His summer show for Eddie Cantor was routine situation comedy, laced with rapid-fire gags, according to one trade journal, but it led to his own show where he was typecast. Newsweek thought him a meek, washed-down blonde with saucer eyes and a perpetual woe-begone manner, with flashes of Harold Lloyd and Charlie Chaplin. He was signed for the Jimmy Durante Show in 1948, and his new series for Tums premiered while he was still a Durante regular. He finished the year on both shows, but Young had a hot and cold career on radio. He was often thought to be the man about to make it big. He made some films to mixed critical notice. Then he went into TV, where perhaps his humor was better placed. Today, he is best remembered for his 1961 through 1965 CBS TV role of Wilbur Post, the man who talked to Mr. Ed, The Talking Horse. Wow. Hints of Harold Lloyd and Charlie Chaplin. Hints. Very interesting. Krusty meant curmudgeon. Yeah, curmudgeon, old grump. Gotcha. What a fantastic word. Papa Hessenpfeffer. Krusty, I don't know if I want to know. Well, today you don't want to know. Connie Clary, I'm loving it. Yeah, funny stuff. So yeah, we still got time, 15 minutes. Let me go to, I think I can get to one more. Let's talk about the Aldrich family. The Aldrich family. The Aldrich family was a teenage situation comedy. Broadcast history, July 2nd through October 1st, 1939. On NBC, 30 minutes, Sundays at 7. Summer replacement for the Jack Benny program. General Foods for Jell-O, Jell-O. October 10th, 1939 through May 28th, 1940 on the Blue Network, 30 minutes, Tuesdays at 8, Jell-O. July 4th, 1940 through July 20th, 1944 on NBC, 30 minutes, Thursdays at 8:30, Jell-O. September 1st, 1944, August 30th, 1946, CBS, 30 minutes, Fridays at 8, General Foods for Jell-O and Grape Nuts. September 5th, 1946 through June 28th, 1951, NBC, 30 minutes, Thursdays at 8, Jell-O, Grape Nuts. September 21st, 1952 through April 19th, 1953, NBC. 30 minutes, Sundays at 7:30, Sustained. Cast, Ezra Stone as Henry Aldrich, 16-year-old boy student at Central High School in the town of Centerville. Norman Tokar as Henry, 1942 through 1943. When Stone went into the Army, Dickie Jones as Henry. 1943 through 1944, Raymond Ives as Henry. As of mid-1945, Ezra Stone resumed the role in November 1945. Bobby Ellis as Henry in 1952 through 1953. House Jameson as lawyer Sam Aldrich, Henry's father, for most of the run, also played by Clyde Fillmore and Tom Shirley. Catherine Rott as Henry's mother, Alice. Lee Penman and Regina Wallace were also heard in the role. At least a dozen actresses over the years as Henry's sister, Mary. Among them, Betty Field, Patricia Pearden, Charita Bauer, Ann Lincoln, Joan Allison, Mary Mason, and Mary Rolfe. Rolfe, as in Rolfe. Jackie Kelk, almost all the way as Homer Brown. Henry's pal and companion in mischief with Johnny Fiedler, Jack Grimes, and Michael O'Day in the Homer role in 1952 through 1953. Ed Bagley, Arthur Vinton, and Howard Smith as Will Brown, Homer's father. Agnes Moorehead and Leona Powers as Homer's mother. Mary Shipp as Henry's girlfriend, Kathleen Anderson, also played by Ethel Bloom, Jean Gillespie, and Ann Lincoln. Eddie Bracken as Henry's pal, Dizzy Stevens. Charles Powers as Henry's rival, George Bigelow. Announcers were Henry Von Zell, Dwight Weist, George Bryan, Dan Seymour, and Ralph Paul. Music by Jack Miller. Creator-writer was Clifford Goldsmith. Directors Harry Ackerman, Edwin Durr, Fran Van Hartsveld, George McGarrett, Sam Fuller, Bob Welsh, Lester Vale, Joseph Scibetta, and Day Tuttle. Sound effects were Bill Brinkmeyer. Henry Aldrich was described in the press of the time as typical, not at all typical. And with all the daffy adjectives that those two opposites suggest, He was described as the Penrod of the 40s, but his likeness of the hero of Booth Tarkington's 1914 classic was more imagined than real. Henry found more ways to turn the ordinary into complete chaos and disaster than Max Sennett ever devised for his old two-reel chase films, Charlie Chase. With Henry, ordinary objects became lethal weapons. A telephone was a window to such bizarre convolution that its consequences tested the imagination. A bicycle with a flat tire led to much round robin lunacy before the tire was patched, and a sadder but no wiser Henry Aldrich pedaled his way home. Sounds like a Laurel and Hardy skit, right? Each week for 13 years, Henry was summoned into millions of living rooms to the wail of his long-suffering mother, Henry Aldrich, and the crackling adolescent adolescent voice that answered, "Coming, mother," was the ticket to mayhem. If the show began with Henry tying up the family telephone, it was certain that within the half hour he would somehow have every phone in town tied up. And calls would be coming in to the Aldrich house from everything for plumbers to cab drivers. The show was developed by Clifford Goldsmith from his Broadway play, What a Life. Goldsmith drew his Aldrich ideas from his own teenage sons, who frequently left him bills for services rendered and good-natured complaints about plagiarism after the broadcast. By then, Goldsmith had arrived at an inevitable plateau in radio. At $3,000 a week, he was the highest-paid writer in the business. An overnight success after years of obscurity, his first attempts at writing had gone nowhere as originally conceived. What a Life was a heavy problem piece, with Henry a minor character. Producer George Abbott advised him to make it a comedy. How little Goldsmith thought of its chances is revealed in a magazine interview. He was so skeptical that he considered selling half interest in the property to a clothier for a winter coat. In the play, all the action takes place in the office of the high school principal. Rudy Valley saw it and asked Goldsmith to work up some radio skits. These were performed on Valley program. And in 1938, the company with Ezra Stone, who had played Henry on stage, was signed by Ted Collins for a 39-week run on the Kate Smith Hour. Bob Welsh, the director on The Smith Show, devised the famed Coming Mother signature, which became an indelible part of the radio when the Aldrich family opened in 1939. It was a hit, and a big one. By 1941, the show had streaked to a Crossley rating of 33.4 and was nestled high in the top 10 with Jack Benny, Bob Hope, and Fibber McGee and Molly. But this was wartime, and the young cast was soon depleted. When Stone went into the Army in 1942, his replacement was his understudy from the stage show, Norman Tokar. Tokar had been unable to find much radio work because producers thought he sounded too much like Henry Aldrich. His role of Willie Marshall, Henry's friend, had to be given a marbles in the mouth treatment to avoid confusion with Henry. But Tokar was called in to the Signal Corps soon after getting the lead, and a frantic search went out for new Henry. Dickie Jones, who got the part, was a radio veteran at 16. He had faced his first microphone at 5 years old and was the voice of Pinocchio in the 1940 Disney cartoon. 2 years later, with Stone, Tokar, and Jones all in the Army, the role went to Raymond Ives. Not a single member of the original cast is left. TuneIn reported in 1943. The same magazine found Jackie Kelk as Homer Brown, the act most consistent with his role, always slightly in need of a haircut and inclined to rattle around in his clothes. Jackie actually looks like he sounds. By all accounts, it was a happy cast. Goldsmith believed in two things: family love and keeping the cast happy. There could be bickering at the Aldrich house, but at the root of it all was love, said Toonan. If Norman Tokar reads a line to his mother with the barest annoyance, the director is quick to remind him, be nice to your mother, Henry, when you say that. Such a stickler for Aldrich ambiance was Goldsmith that he had Dickie Jones as his house guest in the summer of 1943. Immersed in the language of the character, he was assumed that fall. Can you imagine making one of the actors like come to your house and act that way? But it was Ezra Stone who made the biggest impact as Henry. He became a TV director after the series ended. In later life was director of the David Library of the American Revolution. Even in middle age, he could get his voice up on demand for the broken echo of Lost Era. The show peaked during his run in 1941-42, and its fade was slowed throughout the decade. Tapes reveal a charming period piece, silly, frivolous, undeniably crazy, nostalgic even to the jingle that set off the commercial. Oh, the big red letters stand for the JELLO family. We all know that. Jello top. Tapioca pudding. Yes, sirree. Anyways, that's it. Henry Aldrich. So there you go. We will end with Henry Aldrich, as I may have bored people with my reading. Listen, we'll see. So far, the first one and the second one have done well, and this one, I shall see how this goes too, and if people are still enjoying it. I know it's a different format, and it's more of a casual kind of. You guys are just listening to me read and talk, and nothing spectacular. I'm not my jovial self, whatever. Well, yes, I kind of am, but I'm reading. So hopefully you guys still enjoy this. Time will tell if people like it or not. So hopefully we can get through the end of the book, right? Eventually. Thank you, John McKee. Thank you for the stream. So overnight tonight, and so glad we should use the word keen more often. I agree, Dave. Yeah, let's keen. Yeah. A lot of those old terms should be reused again. I do that every now and then, and my kids, they crack up laughing. They're like, what the heck are you talking about? The variety on your streams is always fun. Thanks, RTN. Appreciate it. Appreciate each and every one of you. But you know what? Again, don't forget the overnight stream tonight. A rare mix bag, rare mix number 2. Okay. Luke Slaughter of Tombstone, number 1 show. The second one is Once Upon a Midnight, Malice, Aforethought. Why can't host, narrator Alfred Hitchcock. Very rare from 5/11/1945. I went through each one of these, and they're different, but very, very cool. All good shows. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. And with that said, I'll leave you guys go. Thank you, Linda, for joining. And really quick, I will put the links in again if you want to join the Patreon or the channel membership and support the channel. With that said, me and Ginger will be here also on, what is today? Wednesday, to talk about, I don't even know what day it is, to talk about A Blade in the Dark, 1983 Giallo classic. So 1983 Giallo film. So your Vice is a locked room, and only I have the key, 1972, which we just did. People really seem to enjoy that one. So yeah. Until next time, you guys. Much love to each and every one of you.